Have you ever wondered why a lonely woman who helped others with herbs was once called a witch and treated so unfairly by her neighbors? The pointy hat, the flying broom, and the spooky laughs we see at Halloween today were born from very sad times when many people were misunderstood and hurt. This is a true story about the witch hunts, when fear made people do unkind things, and rumors could ruin a life. If you like gentle, mysterious stories from history, tap like and subscribe. We're about to tell a faraway, important story that we should remember. Part 1. The Woman Who Would Not Bow. Her heading, the year 1593. In a small town called Nottingham, nestled in the heart of Germany, people lived under the heavy shadow of fear. Fear of sickness, fear of hunger, fear of demons, and above all, fear of witches. Among the hundreds of townsfolk, there was a woman named Alina Hartmann. She owned a small tavern right in the town square. Alina was not only beautiful, but clever and full of charm. Her tavern was always crowded. Merchants, soldiers, even nobles came to drink her wine and laugh at her stories. But success, in those times, was a dangerous thing, especially for a woman. Soon, whispers began to float through the streets. Alina puts spells on men. She uses magic to keep her tavern full. People say she talks to spirits at night. Rumors spread faster than fire in dry grass, and within weeks, Alina was accused of witchcraft. They dragged her to the town square, tied her hands, and began to question her. There were no witnesses, no evidence, only words, whispers, and fear. For weeks, Alina endured torture 62 times in total with instruments so cruel that they are still displayed in museums today. Yet, through it all, she never confessed. Not a cry, not a plea, only silence, like a flame that bends in the wind but refuses to die at last. Unable to break her spirit, the judges had no choice but to release her, claiming there was not enough proof. But freedom was its own kind of punishment. No one dared to visit her tavern again. People avoided her eyes in the street, and children were warned in whispers. If you misbehave, the witch Hartmann will come for you. Part to a friend with the same fate. Clara Wisenot, long before Elena's trial. In the very same town of Nottingham, there lived another woman, Clara Weiss. Clara was a folk healer, a kind woman who gathered herbs from the forest to make medicine for the poor. She never asked for much, only that her work could ease someone's pain. But one day, a child she treated fell ill and never recovered. Grief turned into anger, and anger into accusation. They say Clara speaks to the forest spirits. Someone whispered, they say she can change a person's fate. Soon, the townsfolk came for her to . Clara was taken, locked away, and tortured until her body trembled and her spirit faded. During her final days in the dark, cold cell, she wrote a letter to her husband. I do not want to confess, but I fear that if I don't say what they want to hear, they will keep torturing me until I die. Please forgive me, my love. I am so very tired. A few days later, Clara Weiss finally broke. She confessed, not because she was guilty, but because she could no longer bear the pain. The sentence was swift and merciless: death by fire in the town square, before the crowd's cheers and the cries of her husband and children. Clara Weiss turned to ash, one among the thousands of women who met the same fate in those dark, fearful centuries. Part 3. The Fear Called Witch. Alina and Clara were only 12 hundreds of thousands of women swept into the madness known as the witch hunts. A storm of fear that raged across Europe from the 15th to the 18th century, and later spread to the New World. But what exactly was a witch? People believed witches were those who possessed supernatural powers, able to tell the future, summon spirits, cast curses, brew potions, or heal the sick. Some claimed witches flew through the night sky on broomsticks. Others swore they could take the shape of black cats, wolves, or bears, or live quietly among ordinary people, hiding behind the face of a young woman next door. Anyone could be called a witch, man or woman, but 4 out of 5 of the accused were women, because in those times, a woman who was smart, independent, outspoken, or simply refused to bow her head, ... was often far more frightening to some any demon or ghost could ever be. Part 4. The madness of the witch hunt. Witch hunts often followed 3 terrifying steps, the same everywhere. Step 1. The accusation. Anyone could accuse anyone else of being a witch. All it took was a believable story, and if you were rich or powerful, your words became absolute truth. Step 2. The interrogation. Then came the torture. There were no lawyers, no defense, only pain. They tied the accused to a chair and dropped her into a lake. If she floated, she was a witch. If she sank, she was innocent, but dead. They pricked her skin with long needles. If no blood came out, she was a witch. Others were kept awake for 2 or 3 nights straight, until exhaustion broke their mind, and they confessed to anything just to make it stop. In England, between 1644 and 1647, a man named Matthew Hopkins called himself the Witchfinder General. He invented many of these tests and was paid handsomely for every witch he captured. Step 3. The punishment. Once a confession was made, voluntary or forced, the verdict was always death. Some were beheaded, others hanged, and many were burned alive in public squares. Sometimes, even their loved ones were accused too, simply because they refused to betray the ones they cared for. Part 5. The birth of a nightmare. Belief in witches didn't begin in Europe. It stretched back to ancient Egypt and Babylon, when witches were actually healers, people who knew herbs, prayers, and the secrets of nature. But in a world without science, anything unexplained became magic. Then, in the late 15th century, a German priest named Heinrich Kramorig did the flames of fear by writing a book called Malleus Maleficarum, the Hammer of Witches. Inside, he described in horrifying detail how to find, torture, and punish witches, and worst of all, he declared that women weareth easiest to be tempted by the devil. The book spread across Europe like wildfire. It became the best-selling book after the Bible, and a dark guidebook that led totens of thousands of executions in the centuries that followed. Part 6. The price of fear. From the year 1400 to 1782, an estimated 40,000 to 60,000 people were killed for the crime of witchcraft, and more than 80% of them were women. One of the most famous cases was the Salem witch trials in America in 1692, where 19 people were executed, accused by none other than children's stories like Alina Hartman and Clara Weiser, not myths or legends. They are real wounds in the history of humankind. They were destroyed not by magic, but by fear and ignorance. Part 7. The legacy that remains today. When we hear the word witch, we think of pointed hats, flying brooms, boiling cauldrons, and evil laughter echoing through Halloween night. But few people realize those images were built upon blood and tears, tens of thousands of innocent women. If you had lived in those times, just speaking your mind, living alone, or knowing a little too much, could have been enough to call you a witch. The witch hunts are over. But fear and prejudice still exist. They simply go by different names. If this story made you think, leave a like, share it, and subscribe for more dark histories about vampires, Halloween, and the hidden truths behind the world's most mysterious legends. The story of witches is only the beginning. There are still countless mysteries waiting to be uncovered. Remember to leave a like, subscribe, and join me as we explore the darkest corners of human history.